So before we begin, let's take a moment and cultivate our motivation. And since we will be studying a book called An Open-Hearted Life, then let's try and approach the book with an open heart. So an open heart that is kind and compassionate to others, and an open mind that is willing to learn and curious and wants to question. And so let's do this so that we can eliminate the causes of our own misery and create the causes of happiness. And not just thinking about our own lives, our own misery and happiness, but considering all other loving beings who have the same wish that we do. Then let's learn and investigate so that through improving ourselves, we will become a better influence on others. We will be able to, just by our presence or by our words, be able to bring joy into their lives. And eventually to show them the path to full awakening so that they can have the joy that goes beyond just mundane pleasure. And so with that kind of motivation, we'll listen and share together this morning. Okay, so an open-hearted life. And I think that because we've been reading a little bit each of the sharing the Dharma days, that you finish the introduction. So we are on the first chapter, which is about motivation, which is what we just did. So you can see here that before you do any activities, we cultivate a good motivation for doing it. Whether our activity is to be here and learn, or our activity is to read a book, or go to work, or spend time with our family, or whatever we're doing, to always take the time to cultivate our motivation. So I'm going to read. It's not a very long chapter, but that's what is nice about the book, is things are short and sweet. And so it gives you kind of one good idea to think about. So I'll read and then make some commentary as we go along. Okay, so it says, this book is about learning to weave compassion into our everyday lives, no matter how busy or hectic those lives may be. Because that's important, because sometimes we think, I'm too busy to try and think about compassion, I have so many things to do, let me get them all done, and then I'll do this kind of spiritual, compassionate stuff later. No. Okay, that's kind of like saying, well, I have a bad temper, but I'm too busy to control it and think about compassion, so I'll just let my temper go out on everybody around me, and then later when I have some more time, I'll see if I could do something about it. Right. Okay. So when starting out on an important journey, it's worth to do some preparation. And this particular journey is one that matters. So let's begin preparing for our journey together by considering motivation, which is a crucial component of compassion. Because compassion is a motivation that we want to act out of. And our motivation, we always have motivations for things we do. The thing is, we don't often understand our own motivations. We aren't aware of our own intentions. But thoughts and intentions rise, and then we just act, and we find ourselves in situations, and then we're going, wait a minute, how did I get into this mess? But that's usually because we weren't aware of what our intentions and motivations were. Yeah? So there's this whole practice in Buddhism of really stopping and investigating our motivations and then also building upon them and consciously cultivating good motivations. Because our motivation is the most important part of what we do. Yeah? In our society, we're used to thinking that how we look and what other people say about us is the most important thing of what we do, but that's not it. Yeah, because how we look, what other people say, it varies across the board, you know. But the thing that really determines the value of what we're doing is why we're doing it. What is our intention? Yeah, so that's why compassion's important. It's an important intention to have. Have you ever considered why you do the things you do? We have many different motivations linked to a wide range of goals. We may want to form and maintain relationships, acquire money, status, or possessions, pursue meaning and happiness in life. At other times, we may not be aware of our motivations at all, going through the day checking off items on a to-do list, disconnected from the awareness of why we're doing these things. Do you ever feel like your life is that? Like that? You know, like you're just kind of going on automatic and, okay, you have this to-do list, so you just do it, and other people have expectations of you, so you just fulfill their expectations, but you never stop and really get in touch with yourself and what's going on inside of me, and what do I think is important in life. Yeah, so often we're kind of spaced out. Yeah, I remember hearing a story. I don't think it's a real one, but it's a good story about somebody who went to a faraway land. Well, probably not so far away. Um, yeah, and they were happened to be walking through the cemetery, and they noticed that, like everybody in the cemetery, you know, their age was, you know, maybe 3 or 4 years old when they died. And so then he asked one of the residents in the town, how come all these people died at only when they were just 2 or 3 or 4? And the resident said, oh no, they were actually older. They could somewhere in their 80s, 90s and beyond. But 3 or 4 years was the amount of time that they were actually alive during their life. Yeah? So the rest of the time, just kind of on automatic. Yeah? So, you know, this practice of stopping and looking at what our motivation is how we really begin to live, because we become quite conscious of why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah? And then when we see that we have good motivations, then we encourage ourselves. When we see that we have corrupt motivations, then we change them because they're like poison. And we want to be happy, so who wants to sit there with poison? Okay. However, it's possible for us to choose and consciously cultivate a motivation in our minds, just as we cultivate seeds in a garden. Specifically, we can resolve to do whatever it is we're doing for beneficial reasons. There are considerable advantages to doing this. the motivation behind an action, the reason we're doing it, deeply influences the manner in which we do the action, how we feel while we're doing it, as well as the outcome of the activity. Yeah? So our motivation, when we stop and cultivate it, then we can check, what action am I thinking of doing? And is it actually something that at the end of the day is going to be worthwhile and bring joy in my life and other people's lives? Yeah, so just stopping, like, why am I doing what we're doing? And then if we cultivate a good motivation, then when we do the action, we're much more relaxed and joyful. We're not suspicious. We're not worried about what other people are going to think about us. We're not doubting ourselves because we've stopped beforehand and we're aware of why we're doing what we're doing. And so because of all of that, then the result of what we do is going to be quite different. Yeah? So we can see that in our lives, because you can do the same action with two very different motivations. And there's an example coming here, but I'll give you one anyway before we get to that example. Okay? So there's always household chores to do, right? Everywhere you live, no matter who you live with, there's always laundry and cleaning and vacuuming and those kind of things. So we can look at the chores as chores. I don't like the word chores. So, for me, chore is like, well, it's a chore. Yeah? I mean, what does chore mean? This is a real chore to do this. It's like, oh, I wish I could do anything else. Well, not any, some other thing rather than do this, because my mind has decided that this is a boring, stupid, menial task that is below somebody of my caliber of intelligence and ability. Yeah? So, why do I have to do it? But, well, okay. Yeah. And so what's our motivation? It's like, well, I'll just do it because I have to and get it done. And I'm going to be in a bad mood while I'm doing it because I don't want to do it. So it's kind of like deciding you're going to be in a bad mood. Yeah? So, of course, you're in a bad mood. I remember one time vacuuming, and I was so angry when I was vacuuming. Something had happened just before that. And then in the middle, I stopped and I said, children, you better chill out because you're going to get hurt if you vacuum like this. Because, yeah. It was like a substitute for slugging somebody. So, that wasn't going to bring a lot of happiness. So I had to stop. And it's like, okay, this thing happened. Let it go. Right now you're vacuuming. It is possible to vacuum with a peaceful, happy mind. Yeah. So one part of your mind goes, oh yeah, I bet you're reading one of those self-help books. And then you say, no, I'm going to a Buddhist class. but, but, I can either vacuum with anger or I can vacuum with a peaceful, happy mind. Okay? So in the Buddhist thought training practices, or mind training, it's how we train our thoughts, how we train our minds. They say that whenever we clean, we should think that we're cleaning up the anger and jealousy and afflictive mental states of sentient beings. Yeah, we're cleaning up their negative deeds. Because you're cleaning anyway. So you think Instead of, oh, I'm cleaning the leftover food from my kid's plate because they don't wash their own dishes. They think I'm their servant. Instead of, that, it's like, oh, I'm cleaning the defilements from other living beings' minds so that they can be happy. And then you think like that. And you think, of different sentient beings who have negative mental states. And you think of how happy they'll be if, they could let go of that mental state, if they could cleanse it away. Yeah. And in that way, your mind is happy when you're cleaning. Huh? And you can also think, I'm cleaning to benefit my family members or my roommates. Yeah. Or whoever it is that you share. I'm cleaning so that when the guests come, they have a nice place to be. Yeah. Instead of, oh, all these lazy people I live with, they don't clean, they leave it to me. Yeah. Yeah, you're going to be so miserable cleaning like that. But if you think, okay, this is my gift, and I'm creating a beautiful environment for other people to enjoy, yeah, then it's nice, and you feel like you are offering a gift to others, and that feels good. Okay, and your experience is different, and when you get done, you don't feel exhausted. And you don't say, oh, well, thank God that's done. Cross that off the list. Whoa. Oh, what's next on the list? Oh, do the laundry. Oh, I don't want to do that either. And then your whole day is just a bummer, because of your attitude. Okay, so we change our attitude. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. So over time, pausing to consciously cultivate a compassionate motivation before we act transforms our mental state, assisting us to make wise decisions and enhancing our lives. Okay, so making wise decisions. When we're angry, when we're greedy, when we're jealous, when we're arrogant, do we make wise decisions? Yeah, I know I don't. Yeah, I'll choose to do things that usually wind up landing me in a mess with more problems than I had before. Okay, so those kind of motivations for acting are not in my own best interest. Whereas having compassion and goodwill towards others not only benefits them, but it's in my best interest. Okay, so you might say, why? Compassion we do for others. How is that in my best interest? Okay, well, His Holiness Dalai Lama says, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish and take care of others. Have compassion for others. Because if we care for others and are kind to others, then we're going to live surrounded by people who are happy. If we don't have a compassionate attitude, but we're always vindictive and spiteful, then we're going to live around people who are unhappy. Yeah. Would you rather live around happy people or unhappy people? Yeah? It's nicer to live around happy people, isn't it? So what we do can either contribute to somebody's happiness or it can make hindrances for their happiness. And so how those people are is going to affect how we are. Yeah. If we cut the school budget so much so that kids don't get a good education and they don't have after-school activities, then who's going to suffer? Not just the kids, but we will suffer, because without a good education, without after-school activities, they're going to be on the streets doing who knows what with drugs and alcohol, and they need some money to do it, so they'll break into some houses. Yeah. So by not caring about the welfare of the youth, we are harming ourselves. Okay? Some people complain about having homeless people in the city. Oh, I'm walking to my job and there's homeless people, and, they're dirty and smelly, and why do they have to be there, and they're begging, and they're in my way. Well, why are those people homeless? Because we as a society don't take care of people who are vulnerable, of people who have particular difficulties. Yeah. A lot of vets wind up homeless or in prison because they have PTSD or some other stress reaction, and they aren't getting help. Yeah, because we cut the budget. Or people who are mentally ill, we cut the budget. We don't want to pay more taxes. So then the people who are mentally ill don't get the treatment they need. Yeah. Families who fall on hard times. You lose your job through no fault of your own because somebody's downsizing and you can't pay your rent and you're living on the streets, because the budget has been cut and there's no services for people. Yeah. So rather than complain about homeless people in our cities, we should look at ourselves and say, how am I contributing to there being homeless people here? Yeah. In not wanting to pay more taxes and wanting to keep all the money for myself, yeah, now I have, I'm living with people who are miserable. Plus I have to spend the money I saved on taxes to get a more expensive burglar system for my house. Yeah? So the thing is, we live together and we influence each other. And so if we work to create a happier society and take care of the people who have difficulties that we may not have, yeah, then we're creating a better world that we're also going to benefit from living in. Yeah. So it makes me very sad when I see this whole thing of budget cutting and the health care, let's cut as much as possible, yeah, to the point of, so that pregnant women don't have maternity care. People saying, well, I'm a man, I'm never going to get pregnant. Why should I buy insurance that has maternity care? I want a cheaper premium. Well, why should you buy insurance that has maternity care? Because other people that are your neighbors have babies. Yeah? And if those babies are sick or those babies are healthy, it's going to influence you. Yeah? We're not isolated units in society. We are interconnected, interrelated. Yeah? So having a mind that says, just leave me alone, you've got your own bootstraps, pull yourself up by them. Yeah. Our heart is quite hard. I mean, our heart is hard, isn't it? Yeah. And then we're going to live with people, surrounded by people who are miserable. And that doesn't bring happiness to ourselves. So you can continue to be mad at all those people who are unhappy, but what does getting mad at them do for you to make you happy? Yeah, it doesn't do anything. Getting mad at other people doesn't do anything to bring about happiness. It may give us a rush of adrenaline, but it certainly doesn't make us happy. Huh? So we have to think about this. This is really important, I think. Yeah. So His Holiness always says, because he teaches compassion and he practices compassion, and he says, when I'm compassionate towards someone else, I'm the person who benefits the most. Everybody looks at him like, what? And he continues, he says, when I'm compassionate, my heart is happy. I do things that make me feel good about myself. I see that oftentimes there are good immediate results from what I do. And even if there aren't, I still feel good about what I did. Whereas the person that I show compassion to, that person may or may not be receptive to my offering of compassion. I can't make them accept it. But whether they accept my compassion or not, whether they accept my help or not, I feel good about having offered it. So that's why he says that he's the one who benefits the most from being compassionate to others. Makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. We all have various responsibilities in our jobs and homes. Imagine that one of yours is to cook dinner for your family or roommates. When you get home from a busy and tiring day, it might be easy to approach preparing the meal as just another thing to be checked off of your to-do list. You might even resent having to do it, thinking, this is something I have to do, even if it's a task you've agreed to do and may often enjoy. But just telling ourselves, I'm exhausted, I have to do this, with the underlying thing of, why don't those other bums in my family do it sometimes? That's a real nice attitude to have towards your family, isn't it? Yeah? That's going to create a real happy family. Yeah? Here's your dinner, you lazy bums. Yeah. Yeah. You can cook it tomorrow. I'm resigning. Actually, in Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication, he tells the story of one woman who comes to his workshop who says, after this, I have to go home and cook dinner for my family because, I have these kids and they don't cook and I got to cook for them. And I'm always having to cook and, I would really like for them to do something. I want to resign. And Marshall said, well, why don't you just go home and say, tonight I'm not cooking. And she said, well, I can't do that. Then there won't be dinner. Then they're going to be mad at me. Then, all these horrible things are going to happen. It's my duty. I've got to go home and cook their dinner. Marshall said, well, just go home. Consider just not telling him you're not cooking tonight. So then later on, he has another workshop. And the sons come to the workshop. Her kids come to the workshop. So Marshall says, your mom was at the previous workshop and this happened. And I told her, maybe she just say that she not cooked dinner. What happened when she came home that night? And the kids go, thank you so much, Marshall. She didn't cook dinner. It was so wonderful because usually our dinners are so tense because she cooked and she wasn't happy and she's stressed and she's resentful and we have these awful dinners. And that night she came home and she just said, I'm not cooking. So we cooked and we had a great dinner. Yeah. So it's interesting, how somehow, like what this woman did is she put herself in chains, thinking that everybody else was going to fall apart if she didn't cook. But actually, everybody else was so relieved that she didn't cook because they were so tired of having a mom that was resentful and exhausted at dinner every night. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah, how we make suppositions without having checked if that's really what's going on or not. Okay. Suppose you were to approach cooking dinner a bit differently. What if you shifted gears after you got home by taking a few quiet minutes for yourself, or simply taking a minute to breathe in a relaxed way and release the tension in your muscles? I also recommend, if when you're coming home from work, before you open the door, stop and pause and think, I'm going into the home where the people I cherish the most live. Yeah. I'm going to be with the people I cherish the most. So of course I want to have a good relationship with them. I want to be loving and kind with them because these are the people I cherish. And then open the door and go into your home. Yeah, makes a huge difference. What if you then generated the motivation to prepare a nutritious meal to feed and nurture these people you care about, to make their lives better? Imagine yourself preparing this meal with purpose, a purpose that is a reflection of the values that you hold most dear, such as kindness, love, compassion, and generosity. Picture those you care about being happy and well nourished by the food that you've lovingly prepared for them. Yeah? And when you eat food, you can feel the energy of the people who prepare it. Especially when you're doing meditation retreat, you can tell if the cook is, liking their job of cooking for the retreat, or if they're just throwing something together to get it done. Yeah, and it influences your retreat, your meditation. Including compassion in our motivation can transform even the most mundane tasks. We can wash dishes so others may eat without becoming ill. As parents and teachers, we can guide and occasionally discipline children with the motivation to help them develop qualities that will serve them well as they grow in life. We can interact with customers with the intention of helping them find what they need and will enjoy. Yeah, imagine that. I know that the retail shops are going out of business, but if you work in that kind of shop or in a grocery store, or even I knew somebody who worked at the complaint department of Amazon. Whoa, can you imagine that job? Yeah? But if you do that kind of job, actually they don't call it complaint, they call it customer service. Yeah. But it's basically what do the customers do? They complain. But if you have the attitude of, here are people who are unhappy and I can do something to change their situation and make them happy, then you're going to, wow, the customer service department's going to be totally different. And you're going to be a real happy employee and your customers are going to be happy. And, you might get promoted out of that job because of the good reviews you get, because you actually help people, who are satisfied, who feel heard, who feel listened to, who feel cared about. Yeah, there's so many ways just to do simple things, and especially these kinds of things where you're dealing with strangers. Yeah, maybe you're a receptionist at a company or, any kind of thing. I mean, we deal with strangers all the time. So we can either think, here's an opportunity to give a little bit of joy in somebody's life, or we could just go through our job with, in which case we and everybody else around us is going to be miserable. Okay, Buddhist teachers encourage us to examine our motives before we act, making sure they are not selfish or unkind, and that our ultimate goal is to benefit others and free them from suffering. Imagine acting with the motivation to free all beings, yourself included, from suffering. Try not to get caught up in thinking, that's silly, there's no way I could possibly do that. Simply imagine how you would feel, think, and behave if you had such a motivation. Okay, so here's a reflection. I'll read the reflection and then maybe we can have a few minutes of silence to contemplate it. Okay? So it says, as we begin our conversation about compassion, consider reading this book, contemplating the ideas, trying out the practices with the intention to cultivate positive qualities so you can contribute to the happiness of everybody with whom you come into contact, including yourself. Imagine acting with the sincere motivation to make the world around you a kinder, happier place, and to reduce the suffering of those you interact with. Try taking a moment to set your motivation each morning before getting out of bed. Today I will do my best to show kindness and compassion to those with whom I interact. Today I will try to be less judgmental. Wow, that would be something. Yeah, today I will try to be less judgmental. Today I will provide a model of patience and perseverance for my children so they will learn these qualities. Experiment with setting your motivation in this way each morning and see how this impacts your day. Okay? Let's take a few minutes and imagine doing that. Yeah? Imagine how you can integrate setting your motivation into your daily life. What times you could do it, what kind of things you want to say to yourself, and then just imagine doing that and how that is going to influence how the rest of your day goes. Questions, comments?
Is there a difference between intention and motivation?
The way I'm using them in this context, no, they're pretty much the same. In other contexts, sometimes you can make a difference between them. Yeah, okay. Let me tell that story. That's nice that it's changed your whole take on sweeping. So there was an old man at the time of the Buddha who wanted to ordain, and but he was intellectually challenged, and whatever he learned, he quickly forgot. Yeah, so it was very hard for them to teach him anything. So the Buddha gave him a practice to do. So in front of the prayer hall, at the meditation hall where the monks were, everybody left their shoes out there. And it was outdoors in India, and dirt comes and leaves and twigs and everything. So he told this old man to sweep the courtyard, and while he's sweeping, to repeat, clean the dirt, clean the stains. Yeah. So he could remember that. Clean the dirt, clean the stains. So he would sweep one side and of the courtyard and clean the dirt, clean the stains. Then he would go sweep the other side. By the time he got done with the other side, the first side was dirty again. So he went back and cleaned that. And then this side was dirty, so he'd come back here and clean that. Always with clean the dirt, clean the stains. Okay? And then at some point, because he was doing this, he realized, that the dirt and the stains referred to mental dirt, mental afflictions like ignorance, anger, and attachment. Yeah, that the stains referred to negative karma, to other kinds of obscurations on the mind. And so, as he was saying, clean the dirt, clean the stains, he started thinking about these other afflictions and obscurations and how to apply the antidotes to them. And so somehow he got realizations through that. He accumulated great merit. He was able to ordain, and I think he eventually became an arhat. So there's many versions of the story. I'm probably not telling it exactly, right, but that's the main point. Yeah? Yeah. So now you like sweeping, huh? Good.
I did discover early on in the Dharma that I got really confused that if I had a lousy motivation, I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So then after a few years, I suddenly realized it wasn't that I couldn't do what I wanted to do, I just had to change my motivation. And when I did that, then life became a whole lot simpler as far as being able to accomplish the things that I really felt were important in my life, but to figure out that it wasn't because I was going to be attached to being praised and having attachment to my reputation or looking good in the eyes of other people, but to really do it because I felt that this was important for my own spiritual growth. So my activities of how I could do that started to expand because I just had to figure out how to change my mind rather than have to come up with a whole new occupation to make some progress on the path. So that was a great insight about how important is the motivation.
Yeah. Yeah, you just change your mind and okay, there's nothing else. Then let's sit for another couple of minutes quietly. Yeah. And so again, come back to this thing and think about how you can introduce a kinder, more compassionate motivation into your family life, into your work, into your dealings with strangers. Yeah, and think of specific instances of how you can do that. And now let's rejoice at what we did this morning, working to develop compassion in our own hearts, to transform our motivation into one of kindness and benevolence. So you can think of all the good energy that we created together and really rejoice at what we did. And then imagine that all that good energy, we could call it merit or good karma, as a light in the center of your chest and radiate that out to all living beings, imagining that it touches them and has a beneficial effect on them, making their minds peaceful, transforming the anguish of other living beings, giving them hope and optimism.